Hi everyone, it's Dr. Tausman coming to you live from, maybe I should say not Roanoke, Virginia. I'm in Hawaii right now and I'm just going to record some of the content-based information for the memory lab. One of your biggest tasks for this particular lab is going to be able to write up a introduction to the memory lab. And so my job here is to try to give you some factual information. Writing an intro is a difficult enough task if you know all the content area, but it's even more challenging if you don't know some of the key content. So I'm going to try to share with you here from some of the documents we have. I don't have hard copies, but I have them on the computer like you do. Some of the key information. You may want to take some notes on this because a lot of this information may end up going into your introduction. You'll be doing an intro, a method, and result for this particular paper. So the study you did, if you look on that book chapter that I gave you on memory, basically the study you did is on page 238. You did a study, it's on the right-hand column. It was by Bauer, Clark, Leskold, and Winzens. Boy, what a weird name. 1969. It's in figure 11.8. And the study you did was very similar to this. And let me share with you the basic study that they did. They were interested in the late 60s in people's memory, and they didn't have computer screens and all this kind of stuff. But what they basically did is they gave a whole bunch of words to people. Turned out that they gave words that were either organized in the hierarchies you see there, 112 words, or words that were random, 112 words. And what they wanted to see was that if people got organized words, would they actually be able to recall them in a more efficient way than if they were random? And what they basically found, and I think somewhere on this it actually says it, yes, if you look at the next page, they basically found that people were able to record or recall words in a much better way if they were organized versus random. If you looked at table 11.1, when the words were presented randomly, they recalled 20 out of 112 words. That's a very small percentage on trial 1, and on trial 2 they went up to about 40%, where those that got the 128 words or 112 words on the first trial, they got a bunch of them right, 73 out of 112, and then by the second trial they got almost all of them. And so this was very important to them. This let them come up with theories as far as memory were concerned that you can read about here. Your study is considered a partial replication of this. It's a partial replication because you didn't have 112 words. I basically gave you 20 words, and I gave them to you both randomized and organized, in a random way and an organized way. And I wanted to see if recall would be better with the organized words. So that was the basic idea. You only had 20 words, you didn't have 112, and you only had one trial with each type, blocked as they called it, or random. So you have one independent variable, it's called type of word. You have two levels for that, organized and random, and we're actually going to end up doing a paired sample t-test on it because everybody took the same test twice. So the hypothesis was that people should recall words better when they're organized versus random. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Let me share with you a little more background as far as memory is concerned as well. And actually, I think for that one, I'm going to go for one of these other articles that I'm going to open up for you. It's a very complicated one that I'm going to try to keep easy. It's the original Atkinson and Schifrin article. Atkinson and Schifrin came up with this technical report in 1971 to basically describe what happens when we remember information. And they conceptualized back in 1971 that there are basically three key structures that we use to recall things. One is called sensory memory. All the information that we see goes into sensory memory, but then it's very quickly reduced into what we call short-term memory. Short-term memory supposedly has a capacity of 5 to 9 pieces of information. And we say pieces or chunks of information because if I try to memorize my phone number, that would be like 9 digits or 10 digits, but that's just one chunk of information. So we know that some of the information in short-term memory, we can fit between 5 and 9 chunks of information in there. The idea is if you ever get a phone number, you have to remember, you try to practice it a lot. So short-term memory has a very limited capacity, meaning it can't hold very much. It also tends to decay very quickly. You lose information very quickly in short-term memory. So what we often try to do, because that's the second structure, sensory memory is first, then it's short-term memory, is we try to do something very important. The word is consolidate. Consolidate information into long-term memory. The idea is if we rehearse it over and over again, it might be consolidated into long-term memory. Long-term memory does not have any specific capacity. Its capacity is unlimited. We can store a lot of information in there. The key for long-term memory, though, is to store the information in a meaningful way. Because if you don't, if it's unstructured going in, it may be very difficult to recall. So long-term memory has a very large capacity, unlimited duration, as this particular paper actually says. So we've got, what was I saying? Sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Those are the three memory sets. We know information goes from sensory to short-term, and information then goes from short-term to long-term. One of the reasons we forget a lot of information is because the consolidation process does not work too well. People tend to forget things. The book chapter that you have and some of the other information you've looked up probably talks about that. What this study goes into is the idea of how do you improve memory. And one of the key things we know about improving memory is that if you structure the information going in, that really allows your long-term memory to store the information well, and then you can recall it well. And so this study showed that if information comes in these structured schemas, in these hierarchies, it's very easy to encode them, put them in your memory, and then recall them at a point later. Much like mnemonic devices work in that way. So if I say Holmes to you, you'll know Holmes for the Great Lakes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. Or if I don't give you Holmes, that would be considered an output cue. It's going to be hard to recall that information. So this study that you did was a partial replication of the original Bauer study, and it basically showed that if information is structured when you're memorizing it, it'll be very easy to recall it and recall a lot of it, and it was very influential. So this paper by Atkinson and Schifrin kind of goes through some of the details. You can read through, see if you can pick out anything to say. I wanted to give you this paper because it showed that. The other paper is a book chapter kind of giving you various background on this process as well. And last but not least, let's see what the last article is, consumer-based information on how to improve memory, which gives you some simple things on how to improve long-term memory. Don't worry about brain structures and so forth, but there are basic things you can do. Organizing the information is what this one falls into. Chunking, method of loci, learning the mnemonic devices, and so forth. Finally, what I wanted to share in just this brief acoustic presentation is how you might go about doing the write-up for this paper. What a lot of people choose to do for the write-up is they start the introduction. You're supposed to use an inverted pyramid. And so they start the introduction by just saying, here's what memory is. They go into the Atkinson and Schifrin idea of the three structures in the memory system. The second paragraph, after they do that in paragraph 1, they go into why we forget so much information, why memory is so bad in many situations, using the references provided as well as any of your own. And then in the third paragraph, how to improve memory is often what people go into. And then the final paragraph after how to improve memory, that we did an experiment to improve memory, and it was a replication, a partial replication of the Bauer study, where you say how it was a little different than the Bauer study and what our hypothesis was. Hopefully this is useful. Give it your best shot for the write-up, and I think that will do it. Thanks. Bye.